Mother's Day ride turned cold case. What really happened to Suzanne Morphew? Before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and let us know where you are watching from in the comment. Mother's Day, May 10th, 2020. A quiet Sunday morning in Chaffee County, Colorado. The mountains stood tall. The forests whispered in the breeze. The roads were nearly empty. It felt like the kind of morning where nothing could go wrong. But something did. Something that would haunt a family. Something that would rattle an entire community. Something that would soon make national headlines. Because on that morning, a woman named Suzanne Morphew vanished. Suzanne was 49, a mother of 2, a wife, a woman who, to her friends, seemed like the picture of warmth and kindness. She had once battled cancer. She had beaten it. She loved biking, the outdoors, and her daughters more than anything. That morning, Suzanne climbed on her bike. She set off for a ride. It was Mother's Day, a day meant for family, a day meant for celebration. But Suzanne never came home. At 5:46 p.m., a call came in. It was her husband, Barry Morphew. He told the sheriff's office his wife had gone missing. Deputies rushed out. The search began quickly. Her bike was found that same evening, not far from the house. But Suzanne was gone. No sign of her. No struggle. Just an empty road. And questions. So many questions. In the hours that followed, panic spread. Suzanne's daughters, Mallory and Macy, were out of town on a camping trip. They hadn't been able to reach their mom. It was unlike her. She was always in touch. The girls called their dad. They called friends. Worry turned to fear. Fear turned to dread. The sheriff's office launched a search that night. Local volunteers came forward. Neighbors spread out across trails and hillsides. Dogs were brought in. Drones scanned the terrain. But nothing. Not a single trace of Suzanne. It was as if the earth had swallowed her whole. By the next morning, the case had already drawn attention. News outlets reported a missing mother. The story spread fast. A woman disappears on Mother's Day. From a quiet mountain town, on a simple bike ride. It sounded like a nightmare. It sounded like the beginning of something dark. The official statement was simple. On May 10th, 2020, the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office received a report of a missing woman near County Road 225 and West Highway 50. Her bike was recovered, but she has not been located. Behind that calm wording was chaos. Suzanne's family was frantic. Her friends were devastated. The community was shaken. But detectives knew something the public didn't yet know. Bike accidents leave evidence. Skid marks, scratches, blood. Here there was nothing. The bike looked strangely placed. It didn't look like an accident. It looked like something else. Maybe a cover, maybe a clue. And investigators were already suspicious. Neighbors began talking. Some said they hadn't seen Suzanne that day. Some noticed Barry acting strangely. Others whispered that the marriage wasn't perfect. Rumors spread. Speculation grew. But facts were scarce. Barry Morphew spoke publicly days later. He begged for Suzanne's safe return. His words were emotional. But some people weren't convinced. Some thought he sounded too controlled. Some thought he was hiding something. Barry said he believed Suzanne had been taken. He even offered a $100,000 reward for her safe return. His friends added another $100,000, $200,000, a huge sum. But still, no one came forward. The FBI got involved. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation joined the effort. This was no longer just a missing person case. It was a full-scale investigation. More than 400 tips poured in. Detectives searched rivers, lakes, and mountains. They interviewed neighbors. They went through surveillance footage. They tracked Barry's movements. But Suzanne was still gone. No body, no trace, no answers. Tension gripped the small town. Posters of Suzanne were everywhere. Her smile, her eyes, her face became impossible to miss. People asked the same question again and again. What happened to Suzanne Morphew? In the early days, some thought it was a mountain lion. But experts dismissed that. The bike wasn't mauled. There were no drag marks, no blood. Others thought maybe it was an accident. But the search teams would have found her if she had crashed. They scoured every trail, every ditch, every ridge. That left darker possibilities. Abduction, murder, cover-up. Behind the scenes, police kept looking closely at Barry. He was the last known person to see Suzanne. He had reported her missing. He said he had been at a job site that morning, working on a landscaping project. He claimed he was away when she vanished. But detectives knew one thing. Timelines don't lie. Phone records don't lie. GPS doesn't lie. And in the weeks that followed, investigators began piecing together a disturbing picture. But back in those first frantic days, the town clung to hope. Hope that Suzanne would walk through the door. Hope that maybe she was out there, alive, waiting to be found. Searches continued for weeks. Helicopters circled overhead. Dive teams searched bodies of water. Volunteers combed through rough terrain. But day after day ended the same. Empty-handed. It was becoming clear. This wasn't just a disappearance. It was something much worse. The Morphew home was searched. Evidence was collected. But officials stayed quiet. They released almost nothing to the public. They didn't want to compromise the investigation. Still, whispers spread. Neighbors remembered strange noises, strange movements. Stories surfaced of tension in the Morphew marriage. Suzanne had told friends she wasn't happy, that she was thinking about divorce, that Barry could be controlling. It was a side of the story the public hadn't seen before. As the days turned into weeks, Suzanne's disappearance became a national story. True crime followers across the country latched onto it. Podcasts, news specials, social media theories. Everyone had a theory, but no one had proof. The longer she stayed missing, the darker the theories became. By June, the official search efforts slowed. The sheriff's office said they had exhausted every lead. They were still investigating, but large-scale searches had ended. For Suzanne's family, it was torture. Her daughters begged for answers. Her friends kept her name alive. Barry kept insisting he was innocent. But suspicion never left him. This was no ordinary case. This wasn't a woman simply lost in the mountains. This was a woman who had vanished from her own neighborhood. Her bike discarded. Her life erased. And investigators were about to uncover secrets that would shatter the picture-perfect image of Suzanne and Barry's marriage. Secrets that would change everything. What really happened on that Mother's Day ride? Did Suzanne leave home on her bike? Or did something happen before she ever left the house? The first 24 hours were frantic. The first 48 were critical. By day 3, fear had gripped the town. Suzanne Morphew was still missing. Chaffee County wasn't a place used to national attention. It was small, quiet, the kind of mountain community where neighbors waved to each other, where people left their doors unlocked, where crime was rare. But now the mountains felt darker. The woods felt threatening. Every trail seemed dangerous, because somewhere out there a woman had disappeared. Hundreds of people came forward. Volunteers, searchers, friends, even strangers. They scoured trails. They hiked ridges. They checked ditches. They called Suzanne's name again and again. But there was no answer. Not even an echo. The Chaffee County Sheriff's Office coordinated with the FBI and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. They set up command posts. They deployed drones. They used dogs. They searched rivers and lakes. Still nothing. Every search ended the same way. Empty. By the end of the first week, people were restless. They wanted answers. But all they got were short statements. Search ongoing. Investigation active. No further details at this time. It wasn't enough. The silence made people suspicious. Suspicious of the unknown. Suspicious of each other. And most of all, suspicious of Barry Morphew. Barry spoke to the media just once at first. He appeared in a short video posted online. He looked straight into the camera. His voice cracked. "Oh, Suzanne, if anyone is out there and can hear this, that has you, please, we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back. We love you. We miss you. The girls need you. No questions asked. Please, we'll do whatever it takes." It sounded desperate. It sounded emotional. But some people didn't buy it. To some, Barry looked rehearsed. His body language seemed off. He didn't look like a broken man. He looked like someone trying to appear broken. And in true crime cases, the public notices everything. The rumors spread like wildfire. Was Barry telling the truth? Was this a kidnapping? Was Suzanne taken by a stranger? Or was this something closer to home? The town was divided. Some stood by Barry. They said he was a loving husband, family man, a victim of cruel circumstances. Others whispered darker things. They said the marriage wasn't perfect, that Suzanne had been unhappy, that Barry was controlling. Those whispers began to grow louder. Friends of Suzanne started to talk. They said Suzanne had confided in them. She wanted change. She wanted freedom. Some even said she had talked about divorce. The picture-perfect family image began to crack. Meanwhile, investigators kept working in silence. They searched the Morphew home. They took evidence. They analyzed Suzanne's phone records. They checked her last messages. Barry said Suzanne went for a bike ride that morning. But no one saw her. Not a single neighbor. Not a single hiker. The only evidence was her bike. And even that looked strange. Too neatly placed. Not the way a crash looks. It didn't add up. As days turned into weeks, tension in the community grew. Neighbors locked their doors. Mothers watched their children more closely. The woods no longer felt safe. Fear hung in the air. Barry's actions didn't help his case. He didn't join the public searches. He stayed quiet. He said he was cooperating with investigators. But many wondered, if your wife was missing, wouldn't you be out there day and night? Wouldn't you be the first one searching every trail, every ditch, every creek? Barry wasn't, and people noticed. The reward money stood at $200,000. A huge amount, but still no tips led anywhere. No ransom note, no mysterious call, nothing. It was almost as if Suzanne had vanished into thin air. In June 2020, a month after her disappearance, Barry gave an interview to a news station. He said he thought Suzanne had been abducted. He insisted he had nothing to do with it. He begged for her return. But again, his tone raised eyebrows. He didn't look like a man falling apart. He looked defensive, almost angry. And then came a statement that made people pause. People don't know the truth. The truth will come out. It sounded like a warning, or a slip, and it made the community wonder, what truth was Barry hiding? Behind the scenes, investigators were building a timeline. They were watching Barry carefully. They were tracking his movements, and what they discovered was unsettling. On the day Suzanne disappeared, Barry said he was at a job site, but investigators found inconsistencies, strange gaps, odd trips. It was the first crack in his alibi. Suzanne's friends also gave investigators access to private messages. Messages that revealed another side of her life. She had been unhappy for years. She felt trapped. She wanted out. And then, a shocking detail. Suzanne had been communicating with another man. An old friend. Someone from her past. A man she may have had feelings for. The discovery changed everything. This wasn't just a missing person case. It was a story of secrets. Of a troubled marriage. Of a woman who wanted freedom. And a husband who may not have wanted to let her go. But still, without a body, there was no proof. Without evidence, there was no arrest. For now, the case remained a mystery. The community kept searching. They held vigils. They prayed. They lit candles. They begged for answers. But as the summer of 2020 dragged on, hope began to fade. The case was no longer about finding Suzanne alive. It was about finding out what happened and why. By July, investigators had executed multiple search warrants. They kept what they found hidden from the public. But one thing was clear. They weren't just searching for Suzanne. They were building a case that would eventually point straight at Barry Morphew. The town grew restless. Some defended Barry. Others whispered he was guilty. Theories flooded social media. Was Suzanne alive, hiding somewhere? Was she killed by a stranger? Or was the truth sitting right inside her own home? The mystery deepened. The tension grew heavier. By the end of summer, the search for Suzanne had gone national. Her story was everywhere. but still no answers. The woods were silent. The house was quiet. Her bike lay as the only clue, and one chilling thought echoed through the community. If Suzanne didn't just vanish, then someone made her vanish. And if that was true, the question became clear. Was the person responsible hiding in plain sight? For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. By the summer of 2020, whispers about Suzanne's marriage had grown louder. At first, people hesitated to talk. It felt cruel to speculate. But the longer she stayed missing, the more her secrets came to light. And what those secrets revealed would change everything. On the outside, Suzanne and Barry looked perfect. High school sweethearts, married for decades, 2 beautiful daughters, a home in the Colorado mountains. They seemed blessed. He was strong, athletic, successful. She was kind, nurturing, deeply loved by her friends. But behind closed doors, cracks were forming. And those cracks were deep. Investigators obtained Suzanne's phone. Her text messages told a different story. She had confided in friends. She was unhappy. She felt controlled. She felt trapped. In one message, she wrote, "He won't let me breathe." In another, she confided about the constant tension. She said Barry could lose his temper, that he demanded perfection, that she was tired of pretending. She wanted out, but there was more. Suzanne had reconnected with an old friend, a man named Jeff. They had begun communicating regularly. First, it was innocent, catching up, talking about life. But soon, it turned into something more. Suzanne trusted him. She told him things she didn't tell anyone else. She shared her struggles, her fears, her hopes, and eventually, their conversations turned romantic. By 2020, Suzanne was having a secret affair. To her friends, Suzanne hinted at change. She wanted freedom. She wanted to live for herself. She wanted to escape the grip of her marriage. Her messages showed she was planning a future that did not include Barry. And investigators believed Barry may have discovered this, or at least suspected. If he had, the consequences could have been deadly. Friends described Barry as passionate, competitive, proud, but also controlling, quick to anger, explosive when things didn't go his way. He was a hunter, a man of physical strength, a man who always wanted to be in control. And Suzanne, according to those closest to her, was tired of it. She had once told a friend she felt like a prisoner, that her marriage wasn't love anymore, that she wanted out. Just days before Suzanne vanished, she sent chilling messages. She told her friend she was ready to confront Barry. She was done hiding. She wanted to end it. On May 6th, she texted a friend, "He's picking fights with me. It's not healthy." On May 9th, the day before she disappeared, she sent another, "I'm scared of what he might do." Those words would haunt the investigation. Barry insisted he was working the day Suzanne vanished. He said he was at a job site, pouring dirt, fixing landscaping, but investigators found inconsistencies. His phone showed odd activity. He had multiple calls. His movements didn't line up with his timeline. He also made strange trips to trash bins, multiple stops, throwing things away. It looked suspicious, like someone trying to get rid of evidence. Barry said he last saw Suzanne asleep. He left early. He drove to work. He returned later that day. By evening, she was gone, but investigators weren't sure. They questioned whether Suzanne ever left the house that morning. Her bike looked staged, too clean, too convenient. Had Barry placed it there to mislead? Through it all, Suzanne's daughters, Mallory and Macy, stood by their father. They defended him. They believed he couldn't hurt their mother. They wanted answers, but they didn't want to believe Barry was involved. It was unthinkable, too painful, but investigators had to follow the evidence. And the evidence kept pointing back to Barry. To outsiders, Barry maintained innocence. He said he loved Suzanne, that he would never harm her, that he believed she was kidnapped. But detectives saw something different. A man whose marriage was collapsing. A man losing control. A man with motive. Because if Suzanne left, Barry lost everything. His wife, his family, his image, his control. And maybe he wasn't willing to let that happen. The case file grew thick. Phone records, surveillance footage, messages, statements from friends. It painted a picture of a marriage broken beyond repair, of a woman desperate to escape, and a man desperate to hold on. Detectives began to suspect that Mother's Day morning was not a simple bike ride. It was the culmination of years of tension, of secrets, of control, confrontation, an explosion, and a disappearance. In Chaffee County, people watched Barry closely. Every move, every word, every look. Some defended him, others whispered behind his back. But no one could ignore the evidence coming out. The happy family image was shattered. The Morphew marriage was not what it seemed. And the community began to ask a chilling question. If Barry couldn't have Suzanne, would he rather no one have her at all? By late 2020, investigators believed they had enough to point a finger. They hadn't found Suzanne's body, but they believed they knew what happened. Suzanne wanted freedom. Barry wanted control. That combination can be deadly. To detectives, it wasn't just a missing person case anymore. It was a homicide investigation, and Barry Morphew was the prime suspect. The marriage was broken. The secrets were exposed. The suspicions were growing. But proving a case without a body is one of the hardest things in law. Detectives needed more. They needed a timeline. They needed hard evidence. They needed to show the world exactly what they believed Barry had done. And soon they would try. For nearly a year, Suzanne Morphew was missing. No body, no confession, only questions. But investigators weren't sitting still. Behind the silence, they were building a case, piece by piece, step by step. And in May 2021, exactly 1 year after Suzanne vanished, they made their move. On May 5, 2021, deputies surrounded Barry Morphew. He was taken into custody, charged with murder, first degree. The town erupted in shock. Some said it was overdue. Others said it was a mistake. But the sheriff's office was clear. They believed Barry killed his wife. The case that had haunted Chaffee County for a year was now in the hands of prosecutors. Barry faced multiple counts: murder in the first degree, tampering with evidence, attempting to influence a public official. Prosecutors laid out their theory. Suzanne wanted to leave. She had been messaging another man. She was ready to divorce. Barry found out. He couldn't take it. He confronted her on Mother's Day weekend. And Suzanne never walked away alive. Phone data became the cornerstone. Suzanne's phone went silent on May 9th, the day before Mother's Day. It stopped sending signals, stopped showing activity. Detectives believed that was when she died. Barry's phone, however, told another story. It showed strange movements, deleted messages, odd activity late at night. At one point, his phone recorded dozens of pings in unusual places around the house, as if he was running around, cleaning, hiding something. To investigators, it looked like a frantic attempt to cover his tracks. Barry also took a series of strange trips on the day Suzanne disappeared. He drove around, stopping at trash bins, throwing things away, over and over. What was he discarding? No one knows, but prosecutors believed it was evidence. Security footage captured him tossing items into dumpsters across town. Fast, secretive, suspicious. It was a pattern that looked anything but normal. Barry claimed he was at a job site in Broomfield, hours away, but investigators checked. His movements didn't make sense. He arrived late. He left early. He barely did any work. Coworkers later said he acted odd, distracted, nervous. The alibi that was supposed to protect him became another hole in his story. Then came Suzanne's messages. Her words painted a tragic picture. She felt trapped. She wanted to leave. She told her friend she was scared of Barry. Her private communications with another man revealed she had found comfort elsewhere. Someone she trusted. Someone she was falling for. To prosecutors, this was motive. Barry's control was slipping. His marriage was collapsing, and his pride couldn't handle it. In court documents, prosecutors laid it out. On May 9th, Suzanne texted her friend that Barry was picking fights with her. That night, investigators believed the marriage exploded. The next morning, Suzanne's phone went dark. Barry's phone showed suspicious movements. He was up before dawn, moving around, running outside the house, his phone pinging in odd places. Then came the trash runs, the strange trip to Broomfield, the lack of real work, and the frantic return painted a picture of a man trying to clean up a crime. When Barry was arrested, the courtroom became the stage. Prosecutors laid out their case. They called him controlling. They said he killed Suzanne because she wanted to leave. They said the bike was staged. They said he disposed of evidence. The defense pushed back hard. They said there was no body, no blood, no murder weapon. They argued the case was built on circumstantial evidence, that investigators had tunnel vision, that Barry was innocent. It was a battle of narratives. In the middle of it all stood Mallory and Macy, Suzanne's daughters, Barry's daughters. They believed their father. They stood by him. In court, they sat behind him, defending him, loving him, believing he didn't do it. Tore at the community. Some couldn't understand their loyalty. Others saw it as natural. They had already lost their mother. How could they bear to lose their father too? The prosecution had passion. They had a timeline. They had suspicious behavior. But what they didn't have was hard proof. No body, no blood, no murder weapon. The case was circumstantial. And in America, that matters. Jurors demand proof. Defense attorneys tear holes in theories. And Barry's defense team was relentless. The hearings stretched on. Each side presented witnesses. Experts testified. Detectives explained phone records. Friends read Suzanne's messages. It was emotional. It was tense. But it was also fragile. Because the evidence didn't scream guilty. It whispered. It hinted. It suggested. And sometimes suggestion isn't enough. By April 2022, just before trial, the case hit a wall. The judge dismissed the murder charges without prejudice. That meant prosecutors could refile later. But for now, Barry was free. The reason? The court ruled the prosecution had withheld evidence from the defense. It was a major blow. The case crumbled. Barry walked out of jail. A free man. The town was stunned. Some were outraged. Others relieved. Barry insisted he had been framed. He said investigators had destroyed his life. But still, one fact remained. Suzanne was missing, and no one had answers. The case against Barry had been strong in theory, but without a body it had collapsed. So the haunting questions returned. Where was Suzanne? What really happened that Mother's Day weekend? Was justice slipping away forever? By mid-2022, many feared the case would go cold. The charges had been dropped. The investigation seemed stalled. Barry was back in public, denying everything. But detectives weren't done. They kept working quietly, and the story was far from over. Because in 2023, everything would change. And the mystery would take its darkest turn yet. 2 years passed. Suzanne Morphew was still missing. Barry was out of jail. And the world was left in limbo. The case that once seemed so strong now looked broken. But then, in September 2023, everything changed. On September 22, 2023, human remains were found. They were discovered in Saguache County, Colorado, in a remote, rugged area, far from the Morphew home. Forensic teams worked quickly. Within days, the truth was revealed. The remains belonged to Suzanne Morphew. The missing mother had finally been found. The discovery site was strange. It was not near her home, not near the bike path, not where investigators had searched for months. Instead, it was hours away, hidden in rough terrain, isolated. Had someone placed her there? Had her body been moved? Or had she somehow traveled that far on her own? The questions multiplied. With Suzanne's remains confirmed, many expected an immediate arrest. Surely now the case was solved. Surely now justice was near. But prosecutors stayed silent. No new charges. No arrest. No trial. They said the investigation was ongoing. that more work needed to be done. For the public, it was frustrating. For Suzanne's family, it was heartbreaking. Barry Morphew, now free, spoke out. He said he had been wrongfully accused, that investigators destroyed his life, that he loved Suzanne and would never harm her. He demanded an apology. He even filed lawsuits against authorities. He painted himself as the victim. To some, it sounded like defiance. To others, it sounded like desperation. Mallory and Macy stood by their father. Even after their mother's remains were found, they believed in him. They believed he was innocent. They had already lost their mother. They refused to lose their father too. It was loyalty wrapped in tragedy. A family divided by grief, yet bound by blood. Prosecutors faced a dilemma. They had Suzanne's remains, but not clear evidence of how she died. No bullet wounds, no obvious trauma, no definitive cause. Without that, proving murder would be difficult. The defense would attack every gap, and the risk of losing in court was high. So they waited. They gathered more evidence. But each day that passed, the case grew colder. The public wanted answers. True crime followers demanded justice. The community whispered in grocery stores and cafes. Everyone had an opinion. Some said Barry did it. Others said he was framed. Others still believed in a stranger abduction. But one truth remained. Suzanne was gone, and her killer was still unknown. The more time passed, the more doubt grew. Could Barry be guilty? So why no trial? Could someone else be involved? A stalker? A stranger? A friend no one suspected? Theories spiraled, but proof never came. Barry struck back. He filed lawsuits against prosecutors and investigators. He claimed they had ruined his life. He wanted millions in damages. He turned the story upside down. The man once accused of murder now stood as the accuser, and the courts once again became the battlefield. While the legal battles raged, friends remembered Suzanne. Her smile, her kindness, her love for her daughters. She had been reduced to headlines and theories, but she was more than that. She was a woman, a mother, a life stolen too soon. Her legacy was now carried by those who loved her. By late 2023, the case was at a standstill. Suzanne's body had been found, but no one was convicted. No one was behind bars. It was the cruel reality of many cold cases. Even with answers, justice can slip away. And for the Morphew family, the nightmare continued. Where exactly was Suzanne killed? How did she die? Was it planned or spontaneous? Was Barry responsible or was someone else? The answers were buried with her, and the evidence may never speak clearly enough. What makes the case so haunting is not just Suzanne's death. It's the uncertainty, the silence, the emptiness left behind. Her daughters will never know the full truth. Her friends will never see justice served. The world may never learn exactly what happened on Mother's Day 2020. And that's what makes this case unforgettable. Every missing person case carries pain. But Suzanne's story is different, because it had everything: a happy family on the surface, a marriage falling apart in private, secrets, affairs, suspicion, arrest, dismissal, and finally discovery. It was a story filled with twists and turns. And yet, after everything, it ended with silence. Prosecutors still call it an open case. They say charges could come again. They say the investigation is not over. But time is passing. Memories fade. Evidence grows weaker. And with each day, justice feels further away. Suzanne Morphew went for a bike ride on Mother's Day 2020. She never came home. 3 years later, her remains were found. But the truth of what happened that day remains hidden. Was it her husband, a stranger, or a mystery that will never be solved? One thing is certain. Suzanne's story is not just about one woman. It's about the fragility of trust, the danger of secrets, and the haunting reality that sometimes justice never arrives. And so, the case of Suzanne Morphew remains one of the most chilling mysteries in America. A story of love, betrayal, suspicion, and silence. A case that leaves us all asking the same question: what really happened to Suzanne Morphew? For more chilling true crime stories, Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.